The city never slowed down. Cars honked, neon lights buzzed, and everyone seemed to rush past without ever truly looking at one another. But for Emma, a 19-year-old delivery girl, the world felt even faster. She balanced 2 part-time jobs, juggled college classes she could barely afford, and lived in a small rented room that smelled faintly of damp paint. Every day she strapped on her delivery bag and zipped through the streets on her old bike, delivering food to people who didn't even look up when she handed it over. She was used to being invisible, but one night that changed. It was a late evening shift. The sky had just begun to drizzle, and Emma's phone buzzed with her last delivery order of the day. The address made her eyebrows rise. The tallest building in the city, the Hartfield Tower. It was the skyscraper that housed penthouses for the ultra-rich. She had never delivered there before. Curiosity fluttered inside her as she pushed her bike against the wind. By the time she reached the tower, her shoes were soaked, and her jacket clung to her like a second skin. Still, she pushed open the giant glass doors, stepping into the glittering marble lobby that looked more like a palace than a residence. The security guard gave her a quick check and then nodded toward the private elevator. Penthouse. Top floor. Emma's heart thumped. The elevator ride felt endless as she watched the numbers climb. When the doors finally slid open, she stepped into a world she had never seen before. Golden chandeliers, marble floors, a panoramic view of the city sparkling below. And then she saw him. A tall man stood by the window, his back straight, his suit pressed to perfection. His hair was touched with silver, his presence commanding yet calm. She instantly recognized him from the news. Alexander Hartfield, billionaire investor, one of the most powerful men in the country. Her throat went dry. This wasn't just any customer. But when Alexander turned to face her, something inside Emma broke. Her hands trembled, her chest tightened, and tears she had been holding back for years began to blur her vision. The billionaire raised an eyebrow. "Are you all right?" Emma swallowed hard, stepped forward, and whispered words that froze the air between them. "Dad?" The bag slipped from her hands. The billionaire's eyes widened, his face losing its controlled composure. "What did you just say?" Alexander asked, his voice sharp but trembling. Emma's lips quivered as the truth tumbled out. You're my father." And in that single moment, the entire world inside the penthouse seemed to shatter. For a moment, Alexander Hartfield simply froze. His hand tightened around the glass of wine he'd been holding, and the steady confidence he was known for seemed to crack. "I think you've mistaken me for someone else," he said finally, his voice clipped, his expression unreadable. "I don't have a daughter." But Emma didn't back down. Her throat burned, her hands shook, yet she forced the words out. "You do. You may not remember her, but she remembers you. My mother, Claire. She used to work here in this very building, back when it wasn't Hartfield Tower. You knew her." At the mention of the name, Alexander's eyes flickered. Just for a second, the cold billionaire facade slipped. "Claire?" he whispered under his breath, almost as if the name brought back a memory he'd buried deep. Emma stepped closer, her voice cracking. "She raised me on her own. She told me she once loved a man who left her with nothing but heartbreak, and me. I never believed her. I thought maybe she was exaggerating, maybe just bitter. Until I saw a photo." Her voice faltered. "Until I saw you." The billionaire set his glass down, turning his back on her as if the city lights could shield him from the storm unraveling inside. "This is ridiculous," Alexander said firmly, though his tone carried a tremor. "If your mother truly believed I was your father, she would have told me. She would have come forward." "She did," Emma snapped, her tears breaking free. "She wrote to you more than once. Letters, pleas for help. You never responded. Do you know how it feels to grow up with nothing while knowing the man who could change everything lived in a palace above the clouds?" Her words cut deeper than she realized. Alexander turned slowly, his face pale. "I never received those letters." His voice was low, haunted. Emma's chest rose and fell rapidly, as though her entire being balanced on his next words. "You're telling me you really didn't know?" The silence between them grew heavy. Alexander's gaze softened, searching her face as if he was seeing his past reflected in her eyes. Eyes that looked painfully familiar. Finally, he spoke softer now. "If what you're saying is true, then..." He paused, his jaw tightening. "Then I might have failed you without even knowing it." Emma's heart pounded. For the first time in her life, the wall between rich and poor, powerful and powerless, felt like it was cracking. But then Alexander took a step closer, his presence overwhelming. "If you truly believe I'm your father, then prove it." The air turned cold. Emma blinked, caught off guard. "Prove it? How?" His voice was calm, but his eyes burned with an intensity that made her shiver. A name, a date, something only Claire and I would know. Emma swallowed hard, clutching her delivery bag like a lifeline. She had waited her whole life for this moment. Now she needed to say the one thing that would either bind them forever or shatter her last hope. Emma's lips trembled. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory, soft and tired late at night when she thought Emma was already asleep. She said, Emma began, her voice barely more than a whisper. "You used to call her Starling. That was your name for her? She said the last night you saw her, you promised you'd come back, but you never did." The moment the word left her lips, Alexander's composure broke. His eyes widened, and for the first time in years, the billionaire looked like a man who had been hit by a storm he didn't see coming. "Starling," he whispered, his voice cracking like glass. His hand gripped the edge of the marble table, steadying himself. Emma stepped closer, tears streaming down her cheeks. "She told me not to hate you. Even when the rent was overdue, when we had nothing to eat, when she got sick, she never once spoke your name with anger. Only sadness. She said you were lost in your world, and maybe you never knew about me." Alexander closed his eyes, his chest rising and falling unevenly. A memory flashed in his mind. 2 decades ago, before his empire, before the headlines, before he was the man the world feared and admired. A small apartment, a young woman with laughter in her eyes, a night of dreams, and then silence. He opened his eyes again, but now his gaze was locked on Emma. And for the first time, he didn't just see a stranger. He saw his past reflected in her face. Her jawline, her eyes, even the way she stood. "My God," he murmured. "You really are." His voice trailed off, unable to finish. Emma swallowed hard. "I don't need your money. I don't even need your name. I just wanted to know if the man my mother spoke of was real, if I was nothing but a mistake, or if I was someone's daughter." The words sliced through Alexander's heart. Billionaire, empire builder, master of negotiations, yet here he was, speechless before a girl who claimed to be his blood. He turned away, his voice low and heavy. "If I truly am your father, then I've committed the greatest sin of my life without ever realizing it." Emma's breath hitched. She hadn't expected remorse. She had prepared for denial, anger, rejection, but not this raw vulnerability. Before she could speak, Alexander walked toward a drawer, pulling out a small leather box. Inside was a photograph, faded, worn from time, kept hidden like a relic. He handed it to her silently. Emma's hands shook as she opened it. Her breath caught. It was her mother. Younger, smiling, leaning against Alexander in a candid photo. He wasn't the billionaire in the picture. He was just a man, happy and carefree before the weight of the world had changed him. Emma clutched the photo, her tears falling harder now. "You did love her," Alexander's voice broke. "More than I ever admitted. And if you are her daughter, then I've lost 20 years I'll never get back." The room fell silent. The billionaire, known for closing billion-dollar deals without blinking, stood undone before a girl who had just delivered food to his door, who might very well be his daughter. And for the first time in his life, Alexander Hartfield didn't know what to do next. The silence in the mansion felt suffocating. Emma stood there, clutching the photo as if it were her only anchor, while Alexander paced the room, his hand dragging through his perfectly styled hair. His world, built on logic, contracts, and evidence, was suddenly colliding with something far messier: blood, memory, and regret. Finally, he turned to her. His voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed the storm inside. "Emma, if what you're saying is true, I owe you more than I can ever repay. But I can't..." He stopped himself, struggling to find the words. "I can't just accept this on feeling alone. My life, it's not simple. People will say you're lying after my fortune. I've spent years surrounded by lies. If you really are my daughter, I need proof." Emma's heart sank. Proof. Of course, the billionaire wanted evidence, not emotion. Her fingers tightened on the photograph. "You think I came here for your money?" she asked, her voice cracking. "Do you know how hard it was for me to walk through your doors? To even say that word to you?" Her tears slipped freely now. "Dad, I've never called anyone that before."
Alexander's next words came out like a confession he had buried for years. "Your mother was the only woman who ever saw me for who I was. Not for the money, not for the power, just me. And when I lost her, I buried that part of myself too. Seeing you tonight, Emma, was like seeing her again. And I don't know if I deserve it, but I don't want to lose you. The street around them was noisy, but in that moment, the world seemed to go still. Emma's heart clenched. For the first time, she saw not the billionaire, but the broken man beneath. But could she trust him? Emma stood frozen, her heart pounding louder than the rain outside. Alexander's words, "I am your father," echoed in her mind like a thunderclap. For so many years, she had imagined what her father might look like, what he might say if he were real. And now here he was, wealthy, powerful, yet broken before her. Tears blurred her vision. "Why now? After all these years, why didn't you come for me?" she whispered. Alexander's voice cracked. "Because I was a coward. I thought money could erase my sins. But when you called me Dad, even by accident, it felt like the universe was giving me one last chance." The silence stretched between them, heavy and raw. Finally, Emma stepped forward. Slowly, hesitantly, she wrapped her arms around him. For the first time in his life, Alexander didn't feel like a billionaire. He felt like a father. And for Emma, the girl who had spent years longing for a family, that embrace wasn't just forgiveness, it was the beginning of healing. The world outside didn't stop, the rain didn't pause, and life's struggles weren't erased. But inside that small apartment, something extraordinary happened. A broken family found its way back together. Sometimes the richest man in the world isn't the one with the most money. It's the one who finally finds love.